Good afternoon. I'm Digby Ricci. Welcome to a series of lectures, Enriched English. The first three lectures are devoted to celebrating the genius of William Shakespeare, brushing up the bard. And we are concentrating on his great tragedy of love and power politics, Antony and Cleopatra. In the first lecture, I explored the character of Antony and the character of Cleopatra and their quest to achieve the unrivaled, incomparable life. And those of you who listened to the lecture would have been struck by the fact that I focused on how critical Shakespeare is of the Romans' insistence that their world represents order, civilization, and rationality, when actually it is torn apart by conflicts inspired by the passionate pursuit of power by the very Romans who pride themselves on their self-control. However, although Rome is presented critically by Shakespeare, Egypt is not glorified either. In a wonderful introduction to the Bantam Books edition of Antony and Cleopatra, the renowned Shakespearean scholar and editor David Bevington sums up Egypt, Shakespeare's presentation of Egypt, in a memorable passage. He writes, "Egypt is enchanting, but clearly enervating, a bizarre assemblage of soothsayers, eunuchs, and waiting gentlewomen who wish to be married to 3 kings in a forenoon and widow them off. Their mirth is all bawdry." Bawdry means humour with a very sexual quality to it, tinged with practices such as transvestism that Roman custom views as licentious. The prevailing images are of procreation, sleep. Cleopatra calls for Mandragora to put her to sleep until Antony returns to her. The oriental opulence of Cleopatra's barge, feasting and drinking. As Enobarbus says, "Mine and more of our fortunes tonight shall be drunk to bed." This is very beautifully put, but it must be remembered that for all its excesses, Egypt does provide a world in which two figures like Antony and Cleopatra can strive to achieve a great and elevated union beyond the uncertainties and the betrayals of earthly existence. Antony and Cleopatra is, in a sense, a tragedy of transformation, of people striving to become what they wish to be. And Antony and Cleopatra have both the desire and the ability to transform themselves for posterity and therefore win a victory in the accounts of their lives. Both of them inspire intense love and loyalty in their followers. Charmian and Iras die with Cleopatra, and Enobarbus, although he betrays Antony, remains devoted to him. It is one of the tragic paradoxes of the play that Enobarbus's betrayal of Antony is in fact an assertion of his loyalty to Antony. For as a result of this betrayal, Enobarbus dies of guilt and grief, for he realizes that his very human, often weak and vacillating leader, Antony, is morally superior to the inhumanly efficient and power-seeking Roman enemies that aim to destroy him. Antony's return of all of Enobarbus's possessions to this traitor must be contrasted with the cunning but brutal manner in which Octavius Caesar arranges for those soldiers who deserted Mark Antony and joined him to be placed in the vanguard, the forefront of the battle. So in a sense, during conflict, Antony can feel that he is waging war against himself. He is fighting against the very men who were once his supporters. That is very cunning strategy, but it is also very lacking in humanity. The soldier who returns Enobarbus's possessions to him comments, "Your emperor continues still a Jove." And he is referring to Antony and saying, "Your leader remains still a supreme god among men." Antony's generosity of spirit, his capacity to love and to inspire love in other people, does elevate him above the world of realpolitik, a world in which Octavius Caesar flourishes. Realpolitik, and it's spelled R-E-A-L-P-O-L-I-T-I-K, is not a term that Shakespeare would have used. In fact, it comes to the English language from 19th century Germany and from the world of Chancellor Bismarck. However, Shakespeare's Roman plays reveal that he certainly understands the brutal concept of realpolitik. Realpolitik is the politics of expediency, not morality. Politics in which leaders choose what is pragmatic and not virtuous. In a world of realpolitik, political leaders are dedicated to gaining power and retaining power at whatever the cost. And this is certainly true of Antony and Cleopatra's Roman opponents. They pay lip service to honor and honorable behavior, but we seldom see them behaving in an honorable way. After all, Octavius Caesar breaks his treaty with Sextus Pompeius and continues to wage war against him. In a really devious act, Octavius Caesar topples the weak and utterly harmless Lepidus from the triumvirate on the grounds that Lepidus has become absurdly a threat. For all his love for his beloved sister Octavia, Octavius Caesar is quite prepared to use her as a pawn in a political allegiance, to cement his alliance with Antony. And he knows full well that whether that alliance works or does not work, he cannot lose. If Antony breaks with Octavia, he will be condemned by Romans, one-time Roman supporters, as behaving grossly towards the archetype of Roman matronly virtue. And if, of course, the alliance lasts, then Octavius Caesar has a very powerful ally. He cannot lose by the deal, but his beloved sister is certainly simply a pawn in a political intrigue. It is also important to note, and many readers of the text fail to do this, that Octavius Caesar presents what is actually a civil war, a clash between two members of the triumvirate, two Romans fighting for power, Mark Antony versus Octavius Caesar. Octavius Caesar presents this conflict as if he were waging war against a foreign invader. He emphasizes Antony's bond with the alien Cleopatra so strongly because this presents him in the best possible light. He is the defender of Roman values against alien invasion. In short, Octavius Caesar is a master of what we today would call spin, the ability to present his actions and his attitudes in the most favorable light and to denigrate those of his opponents. In fact, Octavius Caesar uses all the resources of Roman propaganda, satirical poems, obscene drawings, pornographic sculptures, to present Mark Antony as the hen-pecked victim of a manipulative harlot. He has given away his kingdom to a whore, is Octavius Caesar's attitude, and he expressed it using Roman propaganda to underline it and to arouse fear in the Roman populace of this one-time Roman leader who had been corrupted by foreign values. The most savagely satirical scene in Antony and Cleopatra is to be found in Act 2, Scene 7. It is the so-called Galley Scene. Mark Antony, Octavius Caesar, and Lepidus are on Sextus Pompeius's barge, and they are negotiating with Sextus Pompeius. For all that he professes to wish to return to the republican virtues of his lamented father, Sextus Pompeius has made up his mind to placate the three members of the all-powerful triumvirate. They negotiate, wine flows, a drunken Lepidus speaks about the exotic creatures of Egypt, he slurs over the word crocodile, and so on. In the midst of these Roman celebrations on the barge, the pirate Minas approaches Sextus Pompeius and suggests to him that this is his supreme opportunity. Now is the time. Your enemies are on your barge. Float out to sea, cut their throats, and you can be master of the universe. Sextus Pompeius's response is a very interesting one. He essentially rebukes Minas for telling him about this plan. He says, if you had only acted first and told me about it afterwards, I could have approved of the action and benefited from it. Being done unknown, the action would have been wonderful, Sextus Pompeius suggests, but I now know about it in advance and, as he puts it, must condemn it now. This sums up the Roman attitudes. They pay lip service to honor and to honorable behavior, but they are very tempted to behave in extremely dishonorable ways. And this is certainly true of Octavius Caesar and his supporters. Antony and Cleopatra, on the other hand, remain true to their own natures, no matter how fickle their moods may be. Throughout the play, Shakespeare links Mark Antony to three figures from classical mythology. They are Mars, the god of war, Hercules, the demigod, the superhero of mythology, and Bacchus, the god of wine, revelry, sexuality, human appetite, and celebration. Now, the link between Mark Antony and Bacchus is a fairly obvious one. Historically, Antony often dressed in the traditional garb of Bacchus, the vine leaves in his hair, the leopard skin draped over his shoulders. And this link, of course, makes the point that Mark Antony is dedicated to living life to the full. However, the allusions to Mars and Hercules are rather more complicated and suggest the tragic internal conflicts of Mark Antony. Because Mars in classical mythology is both an awe-inspiring figure, the god of war, and a somewhat ludicrous figure. Mars was involved in an adulterous relationship with Venus, Aphrodite, the goddess of love, and Venus's jealous husband, the deformed smithy god Vulcan, found out about it. Using his remarkable skills, Vulcan created an all but invisible net in which he captured the two passionate lovers and then exposed them to the ridicule, the mocking laughter of all the other gods and goddesses. So Mars was seen as a figure, a mighty warlike figure, who nevertheless had been disarmed, humiliated by the force of love. There are so many depictions in classical and Renaissance art of Venus, goddess of love, taking away Mars's sword, robbing him of power and manhood. And Mark Antony's Roman enemies would certainly remember that when Cleopatra travelled in her perfumed and gilded barge to meet Mark Antony at Cydnus, she was in the guise of Venus, the goddess of love. When one considers the figure of Hercules as well, many ambiguities come into the picture. The Romans would certainly have remembered the rather strange story of Hercules and Omphale, spelt O-M-P-H-A-L-E, the Queen of Lydia. As a punishment for an outburst of temper, he wrestled with the god Apollo in order to get the oracle of Delphi's tripod. Hercules was condemned to serve 3 years of slavery, and he had to serve Omphale, Queen of Lydia. She confiscated his club and his lion skin, and she dressed him in female attire. So in women's robes, he had to spin and weave for her. Plutarch makes an explicit reference to this story, stressing that Mark Antony's Roman enemies saw him as being Hercules, but Hercules in the Omphale story. He had been unmanned by Cleopatra in the way that Omphale unmanned Hercules. The only supernatural incident in Shakespeare's Antony and Cleopatra relates to Hercules 2, and you will find it in Act 4, Scene 3. A Roman soldier speaks of the fact that there is mysterious music coming from the depths of the earth. What does it actually mean? And the conclusion is drawn that it is the god Hercules, who once supported Mark Antony, now deserting him. It is interesting to note that Shakespeare changes his source here. In Plutarch, there is reference to this mysterious music from beneath the earth, but in Plutarch, the statement is that it is the god Bacchus deserting Mark Antony. Shakespeare's change is therefore a very intriguing one, because he is suggesting that military power and victory, represented by Hercules, might be deserting Mark Antony, but that does not mean that all his humanity is lost. There are other and greater gods, one could argue, like Bacchus, who do remain with Mark Antony. It is important to note, therefore, that all these allusions to Mars, to Bacchus, to Hercules serve the purpose of underlining the remarkable complexity of Mark Antony. For Antony's Roman detractors, Antony is Hercules at his most undignified, Hercules at the spinning wheel, the supreme image of humiliated masculinity. For Cleopatra, though, the fact that at times she can play Omphale to Antony's Hercules does in no way detract from the heroic stature of her lover. It simply indicates how multifaceted he is and how extraordinary their relationship is. This would appear to be a good moment to conclude our discussion of the conflict between Rome and Egypt and the way those two worlds are depicted by Shakespeare. In the next lecture, I shall be examining the changes that occur in both Antony and Cleopatra as they move towards their tragic but elevating deaths.